The last customer. The Elmwood Diner had stood on that lonely curve of old Route 66 since 1957, when the highway was still a bright artery, carrying the optimism of post-war America. Its sleek chrome trim, oversized windows, and spinning stools had once welcomed families on summer adventures, long-haul truckers chasing deadlines, honeymooners, and drifters chasing whatever lay beyond the next horizon. The big neon sign still buzzed overhead every night. Elmwood Diner, open 24 hours. Though decades of desert sun, wind, and neglect had left half the pink and blue tubes flickering like dying fireflies. In the age of GPS, chain restaurants with predictable menus, and glowing smartphone screens, most drivers roared past at 80 miles an hour without even noticing the old place existed. But every so often, the desert night delivered exactly the right kind of traveler. Someone exhausted, someone grieving, someone running from a life that no longer fit, or running toward one they hoped might. Jamie Caldwell was that traveler on a cold October night in 2025. She eased her silver Civic off the dark asphalt and into the gravel parking lot a few minutes before 1 in the morning. Her eyes felt gritty and raw after nearly 15 straight hours behind the wheel, broken only by quick gas station stops and vending machine dinners. The layoff at the regional newspaper had come without ceremony, another round of strategic budget realignment that really meant print journalism was slowly bleeding out. At 32 years old, Jamie had almost no savings, an engagement that had quietly dissolved 6 months earlier because her fiancé said she was stuck in emotional neutral, and every single thing she owned crammed into the trunk and back seat of her car. California was supposed to be the reset button, maybe freelance writing gigs, maybe just enough distance from her old life to breathe again. Tonight, though, the road felt like an endless black ribbon stretching into nothing, and exhaustion was winning. Only one other vehicle sat in the lot, an old blue Ford pickup with Arizona plates. The paint had faded to a pale, ghostly blue under years of relentless sun. A thick layer of fine desert dust coated the hood, windshield, and bed. It looked as though it hadn't moved in a very long time. Jamie killed the engine. The sudden silence pressed in on her. She pulled on her jacket against the sharp desert chill and stepped out. The air carried the sharp scent of creosote bushes, the faint metallic promise of rain that almost never arrived, old fryer grease and something warmer, cinnamon, sugar, and fresh pie crust. The bell above the glass door gave a cheerful jingle as she pushed inside. Warm, amber light wrapped around her like an old blanket, pushing back the vast darkness outside. The interior was a near-perfect time capsule. Cracked red vinyl booths, black and white checkered linoleum floor worn smooth by decades of footsteps, a long formica counter lined with spinning chrome stools, and an old Seaberg jukebox glowing softly in the corner with faded song cards. The place smelled of strong coffee, fryer oil, and quiet, accumulated stories. "Sit anywhere that feels right, sweetheart," called the waitress from behind the counter. Her name tag read, Marge. She looked like she belonged to the diner itself. Steel gray hair pinned in a neat bun, pale blue uniform dress from another era, comfortable white shoes. Her smile was genuine and kind, but it carried the quiet weariness of someone who had served countless restless souls over many long nights. Jamie chose a booth near the large front window so she could watch the parking lot and the empty highway beyond. The vinyl sighed heavily under her weight. She ordered black coffee and a slice of apple pie because it felt like the only honest ritual for a night like this. Only one other customer occupied the entire diner. He sat in the far corner booth, facing the empty parking lot, as if it were a private movie screen playing a film only he could see. Mid-50s, or perhaps a little older. Worn red and black flannel shirt, faded baseball cap, pulled low over his eyes. A plain white ceramic coffee mug sat before him, filled exactly halfway. Next to it rested a pristine slice of apple pie, its crust beautifully golden and flaky, the filling glistening under the warm glow of the heat lamp. He never touched either. He simply stared out at his old blue pickup under the single working streetlight with patient, unending focus. Jamie ate slowly, savoring each bite. The pie was genuinely excellent. Tart Granny Smith apples, warm cinnamon and nutmeg, a crust that shattered perfectly with every forkful. It tasted like safer childhood road trips with her father before her parents' divorce had fractured everything. The jukebox played a low, slightly warped Johnny Cash ballad that sounded as if the notes were drifting up from the bottom of a deep desert well. She felt observed. When she glanced up, the man in the corner had turned his head slightly. Their eyes met for a brief moment. He offered a small, melancholy smile and lifted his mug in a silent toast. Jamie returned a polite nod, but something about him unsettled her on a deeper level. He looked faded. The colors of his clothes and skin were slightly washed out, like an old Polaroid photograph left too long in direct sunlight. Marge approached quietly with the coffee pot and refilled Jamie's cup without being asked. "Don't pay Roy any mind," she whispered kindly, leaning in a little. "He's been sitting in that same booth since 1989, still waiting for his ride to come pick him up." Jamie raised an eyebrow. Waiting for his ride? Marge's expression grew softer. "His truck broke down right out front one night back in '89. He was heading west to see his daughter for her 8th birthday. Had a present wrapped up and everything. He called for a tow truck that never arrived. Or maybe he never actually made the call. Different folks tell slightly different versions over the years. Either way, he's been right there ever since. Always polite. Leaves good tips when he remembers. Just never quite leaves." Jamie looked over again. Roy continued staring at the pickup with that same patient, heartbreaking longing that made something twist in her chest. She knew logically she should finish her coffee, pay the check, and get back on the highway. But the comforting warmth of the diner, the steady low hum of the neon sign outside, and the profound loneliness radiating from that corner booth kept her anchored in place longer than she intended. After several quiet minutes, Roy stood up. His boots made almost no sound on the checkered floor as he walked over to her booth. "Mind if I sit for a spell?" His voice was low and rough, like wind moving through an empty desert canyon. It's been a very long time since I had new company to talk with. Jamie surprised herself by saying yes. He slid into the booth across from her. Up close, the faded quality was even more noticeable. His flannel was threadbare at the elbows and cuffs. The watch on his wrist had stopped at exactly 11:52. His features carried that soft, sun-bleached look of something preserved too long in memory. "Name's Roy Whitaker," he said. "You've got the look of someone carrying more than just luggage in that car of yours. Running from something, or running toward it?" "Both, probably," Jamie admitted. Over the next stretch of time, she slowly unfolded her story. The sudden layoff that had gutted her sense of purpose, the engagement that had quietly dissolved because she couldn't imagine building a future, the deep, gnawing fear that she had already missed her window for any meaningful new beginning. The words came easier than they should have with a stranger at 1:30 in the morning. Roy listened with the infinite patience of someone who had all the time left in the world. In return, he shared fragments of 1989 as if it were yesterday. The way the desert stars used to blaze brighter before light pollution stole them. How his wife used to make Saturday morning pancakes loaded with chocolate chips for their daughter. How little Sarah used to collapse into uncontrollable giggles at his terrible dad jokes. He described in loving, careful detail the small blue stuffed bear he had bought for her birthday. Soft, plush fabric, a bright pink bow, the kind of simple, perfect gift a father believes will make everything right in the world. The conversation stretched comfortably through the quiet hours. Marge refilled Jamie's coffee several more times, but never touched Roy's mug, which remained precisely half full. His pie sat untouched and perfect under the heat lamp the entire time. At one point, Jamie checked her phone. 2:19 a.m. She really needed to get back on the road if she wanted to make any meaningful progress before sunrise. Roy's expression shifted. The gentle sadness in his eyes deepened into something ancient and quietly devastating. "Every single night," he said softly, "I sit here thinking tonight will finally be the night. Headlights will sweep across the lot. A tow truck or a kind stranger will pull up and wave me over. I'll finally climb in and make it all the way to California. See what Sarah looks like as a grown woman. Tell her how sorry I am for missing that birthday. Sorry I never made it home to her." The jukebox clicked and switched to an even slower, sadder song that sounded like it was coming from another decade entirely. The temperature inside the diner seemed to drop several degrees, despite the heaters running steadily. Roy reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew the small blue stuffed bear. The fabric had faded over the years, one button eye missing, the pink bow frayed at the edges. He placed it gently on the table between them. "Take it with you," he said. "The road ahead gets long and dark sometimes. Everyone needs something to hold on to when the miles start feeling too heavy." Jamie picked up the bear. It felt solid and surprisingly warm in her hands, real in a way that made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. When she looked up again, Roy was gone. The corner booth sat empty. The coffee mug remained half full. The pie was still untouched. The red vinyl seat across from her still carried the faint impression of where he had been sitting only moments before. Marge appeared with the check, her face gentle and knowing. "He doesn't open up to most folks like that anymore," she said quietly. "You two must have needed each other tonight." Jamie paid in cash, her fingers trembling slightly. Outside in the parking lot, the blue pickup remained exactly where it had been. But now the word "sorry" had been carefully written in the thick dust on the windshield in block letters. She placed the little blue bear on the passenger seat and pulled back onto the long, dark highway, heading west. 230 miles farther on, deep in the high desert beyond Flagstaff, exhaustion finally overtook her completely. Jamie pulled into a remote rest area, reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go, and closed her eyes with the stuffed bear tucked safely against her chest. When she opened them again, the dashboard clock read exactly 11:52. The world outside had quietly, seamlessly changed. The modern interstate with its guardrails, reflective signs, and distant truck lights had vanished. In its place stretched an older, wilder desert under a sky so thick with stars it looked like someone had poured cream across black velvet. The air felt heavier, saturated with memory and quiet longing. A soft knock on her driver's side window made her jolt upright. Roy stood there in the starlight, smiling gently. His flannel shirt looked crisp and new. His watch ticked audibly. The faded, washed-out quality had completely disappeared. He looked fully solid, present, and alive. "The tow truck finally came," he said through the glass, his voice warm with relief. "But I told the driver I wasn't ready to go just yet. Figured you might like some company for the rest of the way, if that's all right with you." Jamie glanced at the passenger seat. The blue bear had vanished. She reached over and unlocked the door anyway. Roy climbed in. He carried the faint scents of diner coffee, warm apple pie, and cool desert night air. They drove together beneath that impossible canopy of stars, talking for what felt like hours about daughters who grew up without their fathers, about second chances that sometimes arrive decades too late, and about how some journeys can only be completed when you're finally willing to share the road with someone who never got to finish theirs. In the rearview mirror, the Elmwood Diner appeared one final time, its brave neon sign still flickering bravely in the distance, like a quiet beacon for the next lost soul who might need to sit with the last customer. Some ghosts don't want to move on. They simply want someone willing to listen while they wait. And on the other side of now, Roy finally made it all the way to California. Jamie never drove alone again.
This has been a story from the other side of now. If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe.